for all these experts. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
sure. Uh, Thank you, sir, and thank you everybody for providing me this opportunity. And as the topic which I'll be covering in would be in terms of electric vehicle, I'll also focus on how exactly we develop these kind of models in industry. It might be in terms of TCS, or it might be in terms of uh, say corporates which I am currently working with is like Shell, or it might be Deloitte, or it might be companies like KPIT, right? So what is the trend which has been generally followed in, and how these modules are being developed? So that is what I would be covering in terms of the session what I have. To start off with my session, we would be talking about electric vehicles. So as we all know, electric vehicle is a vehicle that uses one or more electric motors or traction motors for propulsion. Uh, in our focus, we'd also talk about how exactly uh, these models would be developed in terms of a simulation environment, and then how exactly this would be the future in terms of the vehicle technology which we have in. And if you look into this particular slide here, you can just see that this is the expected growth in terms of the EV market, which you can just see, which is almost around 43.13. As far as battery management system is concerned, or battery development is concerned, like last day we also had Reliance Group pointing out that they would also come up with their own battery. So I mean, this is one of the thing which you can just see that's going to be the industry 5.0, which would be one of the technology which you can uh, talk about people working in future also. To take you further with this, let me not spend much of my time here. What are the key trends whenever you talk about an automotive industry is that currently we are talking about vehicle electrification. We had wonderful previous sessions where they just helped me out in terms of presenting my session here. So I'll try my best to connect to those topics also. So when we talk about batteries and when we talk about motors, how exactly those technologies can be simulated in a environment, that is what we would be talking about. That's one of the trend, which is your vehicle electrification. Followed by that, we also have a technology whenever we talk about Tesla electric vehicle, we talk about autonomous systems also available in it. So how exactly you would be able to develop that is also what I'll be covering as we go further with it. So a combination of vehicle electrification, uh, autonomous driving, and how exactly model-based design or V curves are generally followed in industry is what I'll be covering in another 23 to 25 minutes. And then we would also have a last video on the electric vehicle, which we generally have developed in. Okay, so whenever you talk about what is called as vehicles these days, you can just see that there is an environment, or there is a vehicle control unit, and then there is which is having the vehicle dynamics to be controlled, and then there is an environment. But at the same time, there is an AI perception which has been added to any of these systems which we generally see in the market currently. Okay, so whenever you talk about any traditional workflow, it might be any vehicle for that matter. Okay, or it might be in terms of your IC engines, or it might be in terms of electric vehicle. We'll take one such kind of vehicle, and how exactly the traditional workflow is followed in industry is what we'll be covering in. And then we'll be switching across different softwares which are being generally used, like CarMaker or Simulink or MATLAB. And then we'll also check how exactly the simulation results would be developed. Okay, so initially whenever you start up with a project, what would happen is that there would be set of engineers who are your system engineers. There would be the product manager, there would be the sales engineer, who actually start up with a workflow. So this is called as the V curve, which has been generally used in automotive sector. And they approach the customers, or they might be developing their own product. So initially they arrive at what is called as the system requirements. Okay, so once they arrive at the system requirement, they arrive at the system level specifications, like what would be the vehicle body, what kind of motors, like as sir was pointing out, BLDC motors or different kinds of hub motors, or what kind of motors they have in, so that they will be arriving at. And then what is a motor controller which you're going to use in, right? And then the different power converters you have in, and then as madam was pointing out about different kinds of batteries, and then what is the drive cycle they're going to follow. So this is where we have the system level specification. After that, they have something called as subsystem design, and once the subsystem design is being completed in, they would be going with the implementation. And let me be very clear, this would be in terms of a simulation environment, and then they would be going with what is called as system level integration in terms of a hardware. Okay, so for example, you are checking, sir was pointing out, like you have different motors, and then you would be requiring a vehicle which has to run ideally at 60 kilometers per hour. Okay, or ultraviolet, which is coming up with the first Indian what is called as FZ vehicle. So that will be the requirement. So based on that, how exactly you identify a specific motor, right? So such kind of things you check in terms of simulation, and then you integrate it with a system level. Okay, and then you go with the testing phase of it. Okay, so you'll be having subsystem level integration, sub level integration, and then integration and calibration of whatever models we generally have it. So this would be the general workflow. So how exactly this workflow would go further is that when you look into our next slide here, we would be taking an example. So this is one of the vehicle, we call it as Voyage. Okay, this was developed in a span of 6 months. Okay, and say how exactly they were able to come up with this electric vehicle, which is not just an electric vehicle, but it's also a self-driving car, right? So the target was the retired communities which were and followed by that, they had to have off-the-shelf components which would reduce the cost of development, and at the same time they had to have the right tools, okay, which can help them to achieve this corresponding workflow. Okay, so whatever we just discussed, we'll get into detailed discussion on that now. Now, as we discussed, we saw one V curve and we saw one case study. Now, if you want to come up with such kind of case study, how you would go ahead and develop? Okay, so that will go step by step. So I'll try my best to cover it, because I would not be able to explain much on those concepts, but anytime you can obviously reach out to me. Okay, and then we can have a further discussion on those aspects also, because each topic is very complex and it's very it's lengthy, so let's not get into it. So initially, whenever you start up with any project, you would be having a executable specifications. Okay, you build a model out of it, and then you design and check for the simulation. Once the simulation is done, you would go for automatic code generation, and then you would perform what is called as verification. Now, if I take you further with this, how exactly you arrive at the specification. So you'll be having a set of system engineer and a design engineer who generally connects this particular requirement. We call that executable specifications. Okay, if both are working in different environment, okay, so the connectivity would not be precise, right? So if the design specs and the design engineer are in the same flow, that is, they follow the V curve, so the connectivity would be precise. Okay, and then the flow would be very easy. The executable specification of the model would not have any barriers between them, and then the flow would be very easy in terms of development. Once this is being done, they go further in terms of developing the model. So you'd be having a set of equations which you model, and then the design engineer would do a mathematical modeling of a motor or a battery, and based on the specifications or voltage ratings, he would be building that corresponding battery in terms of a simulation environment. Okay, and then followed by that, you'd be having a set of engineer who would be developing this control units, and he has to have this ECU which has to communicate between the battery, between the motors, and then control them. So there'll be different kinds of controllers which you'll be using in. So a connectivity between a system engineer who collects the specifications, design engineer who develops what is called as the entire algorithm or the model for you, and then followed by that, you would be having a software engineer who would be having these control algorithms deployed on a EC unit, which plays as a control area networking kind of architecture or LAN architecture. Depending upon what kind of models you are deploying it on the ECU, you would be able to come up with these kind of electric vehicles. Now, what happens during this flow is that you would be having a requirements, you'd be having a model. Okay, you would be having the code generated, which will be running on the ECU. You as a person, or you, once you have following this particular flow, the traceability, if there is any bug in the model, okay, or it might be any issues in the model, you would be able to trace back and check the simulation results of that corresponding model. Okay, to take it further from here is that this is what we were trying to discuss in, okay, in terms of executable specification, design, implementation, and continuous test and verification. So how exactly you would be able to develop this? Okay, let's take the first scenario. Okay, in the first scenario, we have something called as vehicle electrification. Okay, so as madam was pointing out, there are different batteries, and how exactly you would be having the BMS architecture, the develop that battery model, okay, and then also look into the consideration of the safety process. Okay, so to develop this, what I'll be doing parallelly is, let me just go back into this model here. Okay, so this is one of the model where we have a battery here. Okay, so I have a battery model which is being developed in. So as sir was pointing out, and as madam was pointing out, we have the equivalent circuit of a battery. You can go ahead and mention the voltage ratings of the battery. So I have mentioned it as somewhere around 100 watt, and then followed by that you also have the leakage resistance equivalent. You're measuring the current, and then you're measuring the voltage using the current sensor and the voltage sensor, and then what you're trying to do is that if the temperature of the battery increases to certain limit, you have to automatically turn on one fan, that is the cooling fan, which is connected to that particular battery. Okay, so to do that, you have a controller, okay, which is connected to this what is called as cooling system, okay, which monitors these particular parameter. Okay, so the reference temperature which I've given here is somewhere around 30 degrees centigrade, and then I have made it as a closed loop system. So if there is any error, it has to identify that, and then it has to uh, control that corresponding battery if there is an increase in load, or it might be any other parameter. At the same time, I also have a temperature sensor which is measuring the temperature on real time based on this corresponding load which has been applied, for which I have used a variable load resistor, and then I'll take it further in developing a complete end-to-end electric model as we go further, where we would have a vehicle body. We'll take the specification of a car, enter those values there. We would also have a motor connected to it. We'll have different kinds of power converters to it, and then we would also have batteries and drive cycle connected to it. So this is one of the model where we are talking about having a cooling system. Okay, based on the temperature of the battery, it has to perform the simulation. So the stop time, I've set it somewhere around 1000, and I have used Simscape and Simulink libraries to simulate this corresponding environment, and hence I would be able to see that the battery temperature, which was somewhere around 300 centigrade, starts degrading as we turn on the PID controller. So this is how you can use a battery cooling system to reduce the temperature of the battery, hence increase the overall performance, as madam was pointing in that corresponding area. So I'll come back to this as we go further. So this is how exactly a BMS architecture would be developed, which would gain insights of the cell behavior and then model it using a control part. So the controller would sit here, and that would monitor all these battery architecture, and then also take care of the safety process or protocols. You might have seen in newspapers, like there would be people or there was a auto rickshaw which had a battery, and the because of overcharging there was a blast in the battery. I mean, the vehicle blasted out. So I mean, such kind of things has to be monitored by this particular BMS, where you can go ahead with performing some design optimizations, right, in terms of the whatever battery management architecture which you are trying to develop in. To take you further with this, we also can maximize the fuel efficiency in terms of whether you want it in terms of series or in terms of parallel, or how exactly the time required in terms of the battery charging, okay, or verify the different kinds of controllers in terms of the SOC points of the battery which you are having in, either in terms of AH or number of cells, or the effect of vehicle mass, which we generally consider in. So how exactly these things play a vital role is what we would be covering as we go further with our session. Okay, so for that, what I'll do is that let me just take a specification here. Okay, so you can just see that what I'm doing right now is this is a ego vehicle which I generally consider in. Ego vehicle is basically a vehicle which we are generally planning for testing in. Okay, so this is one of the SAE Baha ka competition ka data of one of the vehicle which had a vehicle mass of somewhere around 1500 kg. The wheel per axle was 2. The front area was 3 meter per meter square, and the drag coefficient and the tire details are also out there. And at the same time, when the simulation environment is being run, we are considering that the road had an inclination of 2 degree downward, and then you have a headwind or there is a wind which is blowing in the opposite direction to this particular vehicle, so that the speed of the vehicle drops in. Okay, so how exactly you would be able to develop this? Okay, so generally I go ahead and actually build this model taking each and every block, but for today, like since it is just 30 minutes, let's not do that. I have already built that model, so let me just take you directly to that model here. So this is how the model would look in. So I have used the Simscape library. So if you just go into the library section here, okay, you'd be able to see something called as Simscape, right? So under Simscape, there are multi-body and foundation and driveline, and then you have electrical. So I've used components from here, and then I have built this corresponding vehicle. So what does this vehicle indicate? Okay, so let me just explain it to you faster. So in a vehicle, I've considered a four-wheeler. So you can just see these are the four wheels, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the vehicle body where I'll be entering those specifications. So whatever vehicle specifications I had, like the weight of or mass was 1500 axle, the horizontal distance in terms of the GC to the front axle and CG to the rear axle. So whatever the specification which we had here, right? So those specifications, okay, the vehicle body, axle, so those things we just go ahead and enter those things in the vehicle body specification in terms of drag, in terms of pitch and variable parameters. To get this block, just search for the name called as vehicle body, and then to get this you can just search for magic tires. Okay, so you can just say tire, you can just see that you'll be able to enter all these specifications which are out there. I have not made any changes in the specification of the tires, okay, but obviously in terms of geometry, yes, because that's the geometry which is being given in that diagram. So based on that you set your geometry. Okay, and then since this is a Simscape environment, I've connected a solver. Okay, so we have different kinds of solvers like fixed type and variable, and under that we have different kinds of solvers which are out there. So I have connected a solver to it, and then this is going to measure at what speed this vehicle is going to travel in. Okay, and then I have a wind velocity which was mentioned, which is 3, and then you also have a road inclination of -2. So you can see that minus pi 2 divided by 180, that is the specification which I have in. Now I'm running it for somewhere around stop time of 400 seconds. So when I just go ahead and run this, okay, I should see that according to the diagram here, or according to the specification, what we were trying to achieve is that when I run this particular simulation with this corresponding environment, it has to run at a speed of somewhere around 60 km per hour. As madam was pointing out, we have a battery, okay, which has to be yet to be connected to it, but this is a specification. Okay, based on those specification, I'm just checking whether the vehicle speed, okay, is running at somewhere around 60 to 65 kilometers per hour. So I have already run that simulation. So let me just go back to the simulation and check whether it's giving me that. So just go ahead and double click. You can just see that it is almost running at the same speed of 62 kilometers per hour. Okay, so such kind of models you would be able to drag and build it. So if you go to YouTube and type my name, I have created a video where I just drag each and every component and I can make the connections and what is meant by this V, what is meant by H, all those parameters are out there. Now if you say what is this, if you want to know more about it, just go ahead and click on it. So it will give you the entire documentation of the vehicle. Okay, and it would also tell you like what is FZ, what is VX, what is FX, what are the values which I have entered, and the variable specifications of those tires. Okay, so you'll get the entire details of each and every block which I have done. and I have also put it in YouTube. You can just go ahead and check out this entire model which is out there. You can just search it with my name. You'll be able to find that corresponding vehicle there. I mean, building this particular vehicle dynamic model. So this is a four-wheeler vehicle. Now this is not an electric vehicle, so let's go ahead and then build an electric vehicle also. So how exactly that would look, we'll also come back to that. Now, once this is being done, we would focus towards, I have already built the body. That's I have a vehicle body specification. Now I have to come up with a controller, and then there are different real-time data which you can feed in. Okay, so say for example, how exactly the motor, how exactly the controller, or how exactly the environment simulations are being done in terms of a vehicle is that they directly don't go ahead and purchase the different vehicle body parts and then they assemble it. They actually check the simulation on a simulation environment, and then based on the simulation environment check whether it meets their requirement or not, and then followed by that they come up or arrive at the final vehicle spec. Okay, so this is where I have a FTPP 27 seconds data. I'll show you this model also. So where we have a driver, whenever he presses or when he accelerates, the vehicle has to accelerate in, and when he deaccelerate, the vehicle has to deaccelerate. And this is the vehicle data. So based on the vehicle, that means he is looking at the road, and then based on the road humps or based on the traffic, these are the up and down. So based on that, the vehicle has to drive, and the controller has to respond based on the vehicle data, I mean whatever four-wheeler vehicle you have in, and to that, okay, you would be connecting the battery model to it. Okay, so once you have the battery model, you would be able to trace the velocity, motor speed, motor torque, what is the battery SOC, as madam was pointing out in terms of battery current, what is the fuel economy, that is MPG in terms of miles per gallon. So how exactly you would be able to model all this in terms of a simulation environment is what we have it for you in the next model here. So to do that, this was for one of the project which we built it for VIT. So you can just see we have the same I've put an image of a Tesla electric. So you have this battery managed. This is the drive cycle which I was talking about. These are direct blocks which you generally get in. Okay, so if you have your own drive data, you can just feed here. You can just see that if I click on this drop down, you can feed a Excel, MAT, text, or different files, or you can also see, I mean, enter different data in terms of acceleration or in terms of deacceleration, or select a specific file of your choice. Now, when you run the simulation, you can just see this is the data which you're feeding in. Okay, so this is the time and this is the velocity. That data you're feeding into the vehicle. Okay, so this is called as the drive cycle source block. Okay, and then you have a longitudinal driver. So what does this longitudinal driver do is that it is acting as a controller, but you can just see that here there is a vehicle where you have two options here. One is to accelerate and the other is to deaccelerate. Okay, so let me just, you can just see that. So one is for acceleration, another is for deacceleration. So as sir was pointing out about different converters, so you can just see this is where the control mechanism happens in. Okay, so I have used a controlled PWM. So you can use different kinds of controller, and then you have a H bridge. Okay, and then you have what is called as the controlled voltage source, okay, which is controlling this particular part. So one is going to this control source, that is when he presses the acceleration. So there is one signal going here and one signal going here. So based on that, the controlled voltage input is given to the controller, which is actually controlling this corresponding motor. So I've just connected a DC motor. You can go ahead and connect any model of your choice. Okay, or any motor of your choice. Now followed by that, this is where I'm representing a battery. So you can just see that the battery voltage now for this model, I've given it as somewhere around 300 volt. Okay, so you can go ahead and make the changes. So this battery input is now given to this particular motor. Okay, and this motor is connected where? This motor is connected to the four-wheeler vehicle which we have. Right, so this was that four-wheeler which we developed, and then this is the simple gear which we have in. Okay, so I assume that it is a simple gear mechanism which I have put it here, which is actually sending the signal here, which is connected to your vehicle, and then based on that, how exactly the vehicle would behave in is what or at what speed the vehicle is moving in is what you're checking here in the scope here. And this is the converter where you are taking a vehicle feedback and checking the simulation of it. So I've checked the solver at somewhere around 2474, and then based on that you would be able to build a entire simulation environment, and then you would be able to check the simulation results in the model here. So you can just see that on real time you are feeding that data, but you can see that the vehicle, even though there is this data, you can see that the vehicle in this terrain, it would drive at somewhere around uh, somewhere around 18 to 20. In that range, you can just see that the vehicle would be maintaining a constant speed, irrespective of the what is called as the drive data which it has in. Okay, so this is for this voltage rating, right? So I have also added, because these are having Simulink electrical components also, so I have a Power GUI block also to run the simulation. So this is how I would be able to build a entire end-to-end electric vehicle simulation model, which has a motor, which has a battery, and which has also a chassis of the entire vehicle body in terms of developing the what is called as electric vehicle model. Okay, so this requires a lot of explanation, but since because of the time I would not be able to explain much, but obviously at the end of the session I would be giving you a detailed uh, data where you can obviously reach out to me. So just remember, this is the vehicle body, okay, and then you have the motor, and this is the motor controller unit you have, and then you also have the power converters here, okay, and then you have the battery, and then this is where you're having the drive cycle which is fed in into the vehicle. So this is the entire end-to-end simulation which you generally see in terms of developing any vehicle which you generally have in. Okay, so at any point of time, if you have any queries associated to this, you can also put it in the chat box. I would be happy to go to those questions one by one and address them parallelly also. Okay, so once this is being done, we have the second scenario. Okay, so in the second scenario, what we have is that how exactly a developer would be able to develop a automated driving assistance system with a chassis control or a vehicle dynamics model in it. Okay, so generally we might have seen people from computer science coming up with developing different AI based applications where you're able to identify laptops, notebooks. Similar kind of algorithms would be taken in, and then you would be able to develop algorithms. Okay, and then you need not be a hard code programmer to develop such kind of things. Okay, where you would be able to also develop AI or ADAS based applications. How to do that, I'll be just also covering uh, as we go further with these corresponding simulation. So the capability of any autonomous vehicle is that whenever it is driving across, it has to sense in, it also has to perceive the environment. Okay, so whenever AI agent is working, so there will be different kinds of AI agents which are out there. So it has to perceive that, and then based on that, it has to decide, plan, and then it has to act. So how exactly this corresponding simulation environments can be developed in? Okay, so that's where we test it in terms of ADAS AD testing virtual 3D scenario. To do that, let me just
have
come
one
back
minute
here.
left, sir.
So how much time we have?
1 to 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. 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 So, okay. So you can just come down to the app section here, and you can just say drive scenario. It's taking some time. Okay, so I wanted to show you the vehicle identification also, but I'm skipping one demo, but I'll cover this. So now I'm just clicking on add, just drag and create a road environment like this, right? So you have just dragged a road, okay, and then you can just say add road center point, double click on the road, and here you can just change it as 8, okay, and let me just make a tilt here, or I think this would be too difficult. Let me make it circular. Set. Okay. Since let's not go with that. Okay. So once this is being done, I can just click on add this. Can just place a car here. not taking my data. Okay, I'll make it like this. Add waypoint. Let me just say. So I'm adding the waypoints now to my vehicle, which is traveling in on this road. Okay, so we can set different vehicles here. So let me just double click here. I can add actors, like I can just add a pedestrian somewhere here, and then I can also add a truck which is coming from opposite direction. So I'll also add waypoints to it. So that's the waypoints which I have. Okay. Now what I can do is that I can add radars or lidars, whatever you want. So I can just click on this and I can just add camera here. Okay. And then I can add sensors, like we have radars or radars which are out there which are required. And then I can have added a radar. I have added a lidar also. Okay, so you can place it at different locations. So I have placed it in one direction only. You can have a radar here also, right? And you can change the angle. So it depends like what kind of environment you're looking for. And then you can just go ahead and run the simulation here. So you can just see that the vehicle is moving across. At the same time, you can also see there is a pedestrian. This is the simulation environment which you're having in. Okay, so you have a tilt here. Okay, so when the vehicle is traveling at 30 kilometer, you're trying to identify whether my vehicle dynamics would hold good so that it doesn't hit the pedestrian who is standing on that corresponding road. Okay, so you can just see that it has taken a tilt. Both the vehicles are not hitting the pedestrian who is standing there, right? And at the same time, you can also view that in the bird's eye plot in terms of a 3D simulation environment also. So this is in terms of the vehicle. And then if you just go ahead and click on uh, view this in terms of okay, so you can just say step forward. Okay, you can export this into a 3D simulation. Okay, at the same time, you can also generate codes. Okay, so whatever we just generated, it can be generated as a Simulink model, or it might be in terms of sensor fusion data, or it might be in terms of a MATLAB function also, which you can export and then develop those corresponding model in terms of any algorithm which you're trying to develop in. Okay, so like this, I'll just show you the 3D environment also. Give me 1 minute, let the simulation complete in. So you can handle different kinds of simulation environment in terms of virtual environment where you would be able to handle ride handling, chassis control, or identify vehicles which have been moving in front of the vehicle and test them in a virtual environment. And this is what was the video. I think after the end of the session, I'll just point out. You can also come up and use these kind of boards which can be used in deploying these kind of ADAS applications, and then you can identify like the emotions or identifying objects. So these are the different kinds of hardwares which you can use in terms of processing also. Okay, so that's it. You would be able to develop EV and ADAS system, automate using ground truth labeling, and then I just wanted to show you the ego vehicle also. But since time duration, I would not be able to do that. But at least with the 3D simulation environment, let me just take your time and view it in 3D simulation environment. So if there are any questions, you can put it across. Let me also take up those questions and let the 3D simulation environment. It will take a couple of minutes. You can see that it's loading the virtual environment now. And then in the virtual environment, you would be able to simulate that entire vehicle, whatever vehicle which we just developed. So you can just see that we are using auto now this vehicle. Okay, let me just minimize and run this particular simulation once again. So, yeah. So you can see now we are running it in the 3D virtual environment. Okay, so that's the same car. Okay, so I think we have a lot of options here, but you can see that even though I had given that waypoints, now we are trying to identify in the first simulation environment. Uh, this is a virtual environment where you can see that you are tracing it. Okay, there might be a small lag because I'm feeding a HD video here, but but in my system it will be running fast. You may see it a small lag, but you can increase the speed because I've just given 30 km/h. You can increase the speed of the vehicle, and later in simulations we would be making the pedestrian to cross the road and check whether the vehicle has that the controller has that ability to control and check the specs. Okay, so such kind of algorithms we develop in terms of whatever algorithm which we are having in, and at the same time these are the data which we generally consider in terms of developing these ADAS vehicle. Okay, so once this is being done, you can just go here and export the lidar data, radar data, whatever data you want in, you would be able to export that, and you can just see that you can generate that as a function also. So to do that, if you're working specifically on a specific set of data, you can use Sensor Fusion Toolbox and then develop such kind of algorithms there. And then you can also think you can just see that it generated the MATLAB function. Similarly, you can just see that almost around 200 plus lines of code is generated, and then you can also go ahead and generate the sensor data. So someone pointed out with sensor data, so you can just say PRAMOD and then say okay. That would be the sensor data which is out there. Okay, so you can see that there would be a sensor data which should be loaded. Right, so that's it from my side, and thank you for that. And yeah, yes sir, I'm done. You can just take it forward.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Now we will take questions from audience, and there are already few questions from audience, and I will start from you, sir. You are
Okay,
already there, so
yeah,
I would like to ask you.
yeah,
The
sure.
first question for you is that how well the self-drive concept works in Himalayan region. Can it be
Yeah,
reliable to use self-drive concept in Himalayan region, as well as there is a one mistake of sensor might cause casualty as well?
yeah.
Hmm.
So this video which was out there, I'll share you this link of the video. So this is a video which is from 2012. Okay, almost 8 years back, and we already see that vehicles in India are tested. Okay, the eco vehicles or whatever vehicles we have in, if you have the latest version of MATLAB which is also installed into it, so you can see that the MATLAB team, there are a lot of examples where the live vehicle data is being tested in, where they have this lidar which have been placed on the vehicles. Okay, so which are capturing this live data. I mean, generally what happens is that when you look into any vehicle, they would be capturing three-dimensional cloud data, but the lidar is basically capturing the local data which is out there in terms of a radar, 4 radars at different locations, which capture the data, and then you would be able to check the simulation results of it. So you can just ping me to whatever number which I will be just mentioning in. I can share you that entire source code, and then you can just run it in MATLAB and check the simulation results for yourself, and then decide whether the vehicle would be giving you some issues or not. Because we have radar, lidar already in that. Even though, especially in Bangalore and all, we have a tendency um, we get down from a bus, go in front of the bus, and then cross the road. Imagine the person who is coming exactly behind that corresponding bus. I mean, he tries to overtake the bus, and suddenly as someone crosses in, it will be very difficult. But in case of whatever ADAS concept we have, it takes the LiDAR data which identifies the vehicle who is standing in front of that bus also. Okay, so I had this video, but anyways, that's the scenario, or that's how the algorithms are developed these days. You
Okay,
have
sir.
time?
Now there are a few more questions. How
Yeah.
to simulate four-wheel or all-wheel drive?
The four wheel I just showed you in terms of the simulation. Like if you have your own specifications, we can also go ahead and come up with the different kinds of model also. So it depends, like based on the spec, you can just go ahead and make changes there. The whatever vehicle body I used or drive data which I used, that's the entire full vehicle simulation. But there are concepts where we perform HIL, SIL and MIL, vehicle in loop kind of simulation. So such kind of simulations are also possible. We have a platform called as SpeedGoat. You can just search for that.
Yes, sir.
MyDAC
Speed
and
got,
SpeedGoat.
speed
Yeah,
got. Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can just
Uh,
use that.
okay. There is one more question. Nowadays, day by day increase in the EV application, it has effects on power system quality. So, is our Indian electric grids sufficient to take this type of fluctuations?
Currently, in Bangalore, there is a team. The name of the company is Mobilio. Okay, so they have set up a lot of center of excellences in colleges like College of Engineering Pune, which is in Maharashtra, and here in Bangalore, where most of the startups, almost around 230 startups, have come up together. And we also have founders of Infosys and Tata Power consultants who are working parallelly with them. They have set up this in HSR in Bangalore, where they are extensively developing this corresponding model. They provide internships to the students also, uh, where they provide internship where you can go ahead and actually test your, if you have developed a four-wheeler vehicle or a two-wheeler vehicle in your college, whatever hub motors you have it. So testing those things would be very difficult for you, right? So if you take your vehicle to this facility, the entire testing and the entire development of new batteries, which have been done at a cutting edge in combination with companies from Germany, we also have from Netherlands. So there is an entire setup there where they are actually developing this, not only in terms of the uh, electric to vehicle, I mean the grid, okay, or vehicle to vehicle grid. So such kind of things. I mean it's further than that, and they provide internships to the students also, or research scholars also. You can just go and approach. And if you are planning to start up your own electric vehicle company, also they support in terms of funding also. Okay, so if you have a good battery proposal, you can obviously send them a proposal, and Infosys co-founder Sun is actually is the founder of that company. You can just go ahead and approach them. They would be able to help you out. Anyone who wants to know more about it, you can obviously reach out to me. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, sir. Uh, due to time limitations, we will not be able to take up all questions. But there are a few questions which I would like Vasha ma'am to answer. So,
Yeah.
Vasha ma'am, are you there? Are you online? Can we? And to others, uh, all the participants can contact our respected uh, experts to so that they can address their queries.
Yeah. So this is the
Yes,
mail
sir.
ID. You can just send it to me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Vasha ma'am. Okay. Is ma'am able to unmute herself?
I think that.
Okay, now it is okay.
Okay,
I'm
ma'am.
unmute. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. The first question for you is what is the range of battery size? What is the range or size of the battery for electric vehicle actually, according to the range?
So according to the range will be based on how much, usually it depends on what type of vehicle you have. And usually for, let's say, for a two-wheeler, it will be defined in terms of, let's say, 20 watt per kilometer. That means if you want to run your vehicle for 1 kilometer, it requires power of 20 watt hour. And if it is a four-wheeler, usually it is 30 watt per kilometer to 350 watt-hour per kilometer, depending on what type of that four-wheeler you have. And for bus, it is even higher than that. It is nearer to, I think, 1,200 watt-hour per kilometer. Or even depending on the bus size, you will have the different amount of power to be needed to drive your vehicle under loaded condition. So based on that, you can now determine that how many kilometers you want to run your vehicle. Accordingly, you have to decide the size of your battery.
Okay, ma'am.
This is a standard, can say the rates which has been considered for size selection. Or otherwise, as Pramod sir has already explained, you can do the simulation and you can calculate the power requirement of your vehicle based on all specification of your vehicle and where you want to drive it, under what conditions, how many number of start stops, how many number of curvatures are there, and whether the road is plain road, slopy road, then what about the congestion of traffic, has been in terms of the drive cycle. So depending on the area for which you would like to design this, so accordingly, again, with the help of the simulation model also, you can calculate the power requirement, and based on that, you can size the battery and all other components.
Okay, ma'am. There's a second question. Once the life of the battery is over, what can we do with it? Is it possible to recycle?
Either we may go for recycle, but normally this used battery now, which cannot be further used for EV application, they are usually used for grid application, home application also, and other applications where the power requirement is not continuously. There you can use this battery. And what I have heard from the Tesla, that they are using that battery, that is a second use of a battery, we can say second use of battery. They have suggested that can be used for grid application.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Which one is better, battery or ultra capacitor? Or if we can combine them, then what will be the configuration? That is the question. Actually I have combined two questions here. Which one is the battery
I will answer.
Yes,
So as far as the application of a vehicle is concerned, depending on how much range you want to cover, the primary source must be battery, isn't it? Because
yes,
let's say I am having a four-wheeler and I want to use it for my daily use in a city. So normally our maximum coverage, kilometer coverage is within 40 kilometers, not more than that. Or even I say lesser than that, 10, 20 kilometers go and return. So in that case, if you will have, and if you are not getting any point where you can stop and charge your vehicle, and of course we know that the battery charging process will be it is a time consuming. So in that case, you need to have the battery. But along with the battery, we use a super capacitor. I told you that the vehicle is always demand amount, or you can say the dynamic plus the steady state power. And to match out these two types of power, that is a peak power and the average power, you need to have, suppose you have the supercapacitor along with the battery, then definitely the battery has to deliver very small amount of power. If you will check with the acceleration power requirement and the average power requirement, there is a drastically, you can say it is almost 8 to 10 times lesser than the peak power demand. So if you have the combination of these two devices, then you are able to utilize both the device with their full rating. It means that you are utilizing battery with its full capacity, you are utilizing your supercapacitor also with the full capacity, and that will again improve the efficiency of your system. And as I have told you that the size of battery with respect to their power rating will be very large compared to the supercapacitor. 1/5 power weight ratio will be there. So this way, if you go with the combination, then it is much better. You may use supercapacitor as an individual, but in that case, I have given you an example of a city bus where the city bus has been driven by supercapacitor only. But in that particular case, you have a charging facility at each station or the stop. So as soon as your bus reaches to that particular stop, the supercapacitor gets charged immediately, because that is the characteristic of supercapacitor, that you can charge it at any current rate and you can discharge it at any current rate. So based on that, like with that, if that facility is there, then you can have the concept of supercapacitor. But that is with this type of, you can say, the vehicles which take the passenger from one point to the other point, and when it reaches to that point, the charging facility is there. Otherwise, the supercapacitor plus battery, and based on that, there is a development in the field of, you can say, energy storage device, where they are using one electrode of supercapacitor and one electrode of battery, and by that they super battery, which will have the characteristic of high energy density, high power density. So this way also we can have the solution to match
Yes.
the power requirement of vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. So in layman language, what we can understand is if we need a better acceleration and better power during dynamic cycle, we can
Yes.
definitely use supercapacitor if the cost
Supercapacitor
permits.
along with battery.
Battery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay.
power requirement has been always fulfilled by the supercapacitor, and the energy requirement is fulfilled by the battery. And we are using this, means we are rating these two devices in such a way that we are able to utilize full capacity of that. Suppose I am having only one source as a battery, then battery has to supply peak power as well as average power. The peak power requirement is for a short period of time. So we are utilizing capability of battery for a long time with a very low capacity. So again, we know that any system with the full capacity and we are not utilizing it, certain amount of losses are always incurring in the system continuously, and that by you are not able to improve the efficiency of your source system and overall efficiency of vehicle. And as well as the size of battery increases, it require more space. And as somebody have asked for the temperature rise, you need to have the proper cooling also, so that your temperature inside the vehicle part has to be maintained, so that the degradation of battery can be avoided.
Okay, ma'am. Now, next question will be for Professor K. Raghavan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Should we mute, sir?
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Now, the first question to you, sir. Which type of electric motor is efficient in application of electrical vehicle?
Okay.
Why?
So what is the target we have to see? If the target is a space constraint, so then we have to go for permanent magnet motor, because with the permanent magnet energy density will be better. So in the same volume, you can accommodate a motor of whatever size we want, whatever power level we want. But if space is not a constraint, like train, there is no space constraint actually. So there is no requirement of weight reduction also. Suppose in two-wheeler, if the weight of the motor without permanent magnet, if it is a 15 kg, with the permanent magnet, the same power level, the weight goes to 10 kg. So 5 kg comes down. So therefore, mileage for every charging will be better. So whereas in four-wheeler or train, there is no such constraint. So we can go for induction motor actually. Why induction motor? Induction motor is a very matured technology. So and also we don't have powerful magnet, that rare earth magnet, neodymium iron boron in India. It is to be imported from China. So if in all trains, if we go for PM motors, so after some time when there is a requirement of replacement of magnet, and if you are not getting the magnets from other countries, so then all the trains will be there in stations only, it is not going to move. So it's better to be independent of any other country for such applications. For two-wheeler, it is okay, it's a personal use, but for the train or public transport, I think it should be better if we are independent of other countries. So obviously it should not be PM motor because we have only weak magnets, ferrite magnet. With ferrite magnet, if we go, then the size of the motor is going to be very big.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is another question.
Yes.
What is the feature of switch reluctance motor and BLDC motor in electric vehicle? Which one has more scope in terms of research?
Both motors. BLDC motor, as I said, BLDC means generally they think permanent magnet motor, right? So we can talk about instead of BLDC motor, we can talk about electronically commutated motor where we have electromagnet in the rotor, therefore the field can be controlled. With the permanent magnet, there is a constraint because controlling the air gap flux, you will have to excite the armature winding, which will oppose this PM flux. So if you want to have better control, electromagnet based electronically commutated motor is best. Switch reluctance motor, since it is a doubly salient machine, there will be ripples in the torque waveform. The ripples in the torque waveform lead to noise. So noise is a disturbance, that is agreed, but also mechanical integrity will be a question mark. With the continuous vibration in the system, whatever things are connected with all this connected with the switch reluctance motor, so eventually that is also going to be a problem. So if we can tolerate this noise, then it's fine. But if we compare the noise produced by petrol engine, diesel engine vehicle, compared to that, this noise will always be lesser. But since the vehicle itself is a luxury and we want a very smooth operation, SRM is not recommended at the moment. If there are better designs, then we can go for SRM. But SRM, there is a great feature that it's a fault tolerant machine. Fault tolerant machine in the sense when we suppose if we have a 4 phases in the stator, each phase there is a power electronic converter. So all these phases are electrically isolated, magnetically isolated. Suppose if one of the phase is faulty, so then we will be able to reach the destination with the remaining 3 phases, which is not the case with the induction motor. Suppose if one of the winding is faulty, we are supposed to stop it actually. Whereas with the SRM, we will be able to reach the destination. Although with reduced capability, it's called uh, frog limping process, something like that. So we will be able to reach the destination by taking more time. So it's a fault tolerant machine. Considering this fault tolerant feature, SRM is recommended in critical applications like aerospace applications because it's a very critical application. So right now we can consider SRM, but the thing is it's cannot be compared with the performance of a permanent magnet motor. So because the torque is going to be a nice waveform in a permanent magnet motor, whereas here it is going to be a ripple. So what is the target? Whether we want a smooth operation or whether we want it to be a critical, we are always thinking about there will be problem, there will be problem. This is also not acceptable. All the time we cannot think about there is going to be a problem. So we will have to experiment it. If there is too many problems, then we will have to move away from PM motor. But everywhere we have all the trains, Tesla cars, everything is like induction motor and BLDC motor are fitted in all the two-wheelers. So as such, there are no problems. But if we think it's a very critical application, then fault tolerant machine we can try. So SRM is having inherent fault tolerant capability. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. So it means that we can also go for multi-phase induction machine if we want
Yes,
fault tolerant operation.
yes. Some research students have already made
Yes, sir.
5 phase, 7 phase motors, but the thing is it really needed? The reason is with the 3 phase, we are getting a nice traveling magnetic field, which we can call rotating magnetic field. And with the 3 phase, then we have a 3-leg inverter, which is commercially available. The cost of the system, cost of the machine, cost of the power electronic converter. When we are looking for a power electronic converter which is not commercially available, when somebody is making it only for us, obviously it is going to be expensive. And also the motors are not available. So if you are going for more number of phases, yes, it is possible. But when it is produced in a large scale, then the cost will come down. So initially the cost will be high, whether So such electric vehicle, whether it will be popular in the market, it's a question mark in the beginning. So later, when it is produced in large scale, yes, the cost comes down, then people will be able to afford for it.
Okay, sir. Let me check if there is a, yes. What is the application of field-oriented control in induction motor?
Yeah, field-oriented control is already implemented in all electric trains. Basically, it is a vector control. It is implemented already. The reason is why it is implemented, because we want to have torque per ampere to be maximum. What is this field-oriented control? Basically, the active current component and reactive current component, it's actually 90 degree, right? So now we keep the flux is the reactive component, and whatever current is drawn from the stator supply, that will be exactly at 90 degree. We want to mimic the DC motor performance. In DC motor, the armature MMF, field MMF are always at right angle to each other. Similarly, we wish to have the flux and the armature current, the MMF produced by the stator supply. In induction motor, we want to mimic exactly DC motor performance. So therefore, the angle between these two MMF is 90 degrees. So sine of 90 degrees maximum. So torque per ampere is maximum with vector control. So that is already implemented in all train. Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah, I think this was what the website which I was talking about, as sir was pointing out in terms of motors and all. So this is the website where you can just go ahead and check with the motor design development and various other stuff. So I've also put that link in the group, in the chat.
Okay, sir. So I hope we are able to answer most of the questions. If anybody has any spontaneous question, they can ask here. Okay, there is a question from Dharmil. Once the batteries are designed, for example, for 35 degrees Celsius, and when the weather changes, so does the battery, the life cycle of the battery is affected due to temperature changes? I think this question is for Varsha ma'am. Sorry, because of time constraint. Okay, Varsha ma'am is there. Varsha ma'am.
Okay. Somebody have asked, once the batteries are designed by example 35 Celsius, but when the weather changes, the temperature changes, so does a battery affect due to temperature changes? And if yes, then how to overcome from this problem, that problem? Usually under cold weather conditions, if you will start your vehicle with battery, then definitely it will affect the battery life. So many times we are allowing battery to heat up to certain temperature, or when that temperature reaches, after that only you can start your vehicle. And in case of like India, usually we have the temperature of above 30 degrees Celsius, isn't it? So in that case, usually the vehicle is always provided with the cooling media. So a proper cooling facility must be needed so that the battery life cannot get affected. Otherwise, if that facility is not there and if you are not able to control the battery temperature, then definitely the degradation of battery will take place. And when you recharge your battery, it should show you that the voltage has reached to the rated terminal voltage of battery, but the capacity of battery get reduced.
Okay. Now the last question here is that which kind of hacking or criminal activities may become problem in self-driven vehicles, and what can we do about that as an engineer? Okay, this question is to Pramod sir.
So can you just go with the question? I did not get the question.
What kind of hacking or criminal activities may become a problem in self-driven vehicles. What can we do about that?
Yeah, see, there is a company called as LDRA, and then there are standardizations which have been generally followed in industry. So we have maps, guidelines, and various standardizations which have been generally followed in industry. So if you look into my website here, there is something called as LDRA. So whatever code is there, we generally test it. Okay, so uh, uh, testing happens in based at different scenarios. Like you have standardizations like ISO 26262. So like that, there are different standardizations and protocols which have been followed in terms of vehicle safety. So these are the tools, whatever, if it's a normal microcontroller for that matter, the softwares are being tested at different scenarios, so that they are, in terms of they should not be able to, I mean, hacked. Okay, so in terms of performance critical, or it might be in terms of various other fluctuations. So there are standardizations which have been followed in. Then only, like if I have written a simple C code, okay, and then I want to use that C code inside a microcontroller, which I'm using it for aerospace application. So for that, there is a standardization called as DOA 178. So these are different standardizations which have been generally followed in terms of the vehicle security, or it might be in terms of aerospace and defense. So there are different softwares which you generally use in, which gives us high assurance in terms of whatever models which you generally build in. Okay, so such kind of things we should be taking care whenever we are developing such kind of models. I hope I have answered your question. So just go to this particular website and just say DOE 178 or ISO 26262. That would give you the details. And then you can also search for MAAB guidelines. So this is followed throughout the world, right? So we have MAP guidelines. So these are the different guidelines which have been generally followed in terms of the development phase.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all the questions. Now, may I request Dr. Amit Ved, Head of the Department, Electrical Engineering, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Tapan sir. So, the respected experts for today's session, Dr. Raghavan sir, Dr. Nayak sir, and Varsa ma'am, and all dear participants. We at Marwari University, we believe that knowledge is currency, and today you can say that these 2 hours, the knowledge was showered by all the experts, and the density was very high. So there are so many things to learn. Actually, the time which we thought for this, we really felt that it was very short, and definitely we would like to take the advantage of the expertise of our honorable speakers, and we would like to learn more in the future. So EV technologies are growing in leaps and bounds. Limited availability of fossil fuel, cost, and environmental issues have now made compulsory for us to shift our vision back to EV. I'm saying back to EV, the reason is that EV technology is not new. So today we were fortunate to have a panel of experts who had contributed through their research. They are working in this field, and they have showered their experience and expertise. Raghavan sir had talked about different motors, and this is, I think, second or third time I have attended his lecture, and every time I come to know that something is something point sir puts, and that definitely triggers a new kind of discovery. Varsa ma'am had talked about the energy storage systems, and I have already attended her lecture earlier during my visit to SNIT about the ultra capacitor. So today, of course, I felt that the time was very short. Otherwise, participant would have definitely got a lot of insights and she would have definitely discussed about different modeling aspects also. Pramod Kumar Nayak sir has really given a kind of, you can say, that industrial touch to this session. Actually, the session was a brainchild of, this session is a brainchild of our provost, Dr. Y.P. Costa. He wanted to, you can say that, have a kind of talk in such a way that which can be considered as one of the breakthrough or something which people would like to see. And I'm very sure that because of all the experts and means your talk was so full of the information, it was really superb. And our aim is definitely it has been fulfilled. So I, on behalf of all participants and fraternity at Marwadi University, would like to extend my gratitude to all three experts, Dr. Raghavan sir, Dr. Nayak sir, and Dr. Varsa madam, for enlightening us and share your valuable experience in the EV field. I would also like to thank our management of Marwadi University, our Honorable Dean, Dr. R.B. Jadeja sir, Dr. Jala sir, Dr. Pramod Pandey sir, for giving this opportunity. I would also like to sincerely thank all faculty members of Electrical Engineering Department for their valuable support. I would also like to extend my thanks to all participants because it is a weekend and Saturday evening you are spending with us, and it was also very nice to have so many questions, and even I felt that this 30 minutes of time was very short. I would also like to thank again all of you for joining this discussion. Again, I would like to thank from bottom of my heart to all the experts, and sir and madam, we are really thankful to you for your time and the precious sharing, and definitely would like to extend this in the future. So that's all from my side. So good night and have a happy weekend. Over to you, Tapan sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So all the participants can leave the session now. We declared the end of the session now. Thank you, Pramod sir. Thank you, Raghavan sir, and thank you, Varsha ma'am. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Okay, so again, I'm thanking all of you and would like to see all of you again in the future. So thank you very much. Tapan sir has already shared a link for the feedback. So you can give that feedback and the certificates will be given to all the participants. Thank you very much. Have a good day, good night, and a great weekend. Thank you.